Government officials. Government officials belong to the highest class on Egypt's social pyramid, after the pharaoh. Their job was to assist the pharaoh in his or her role as supreme leader of Egypt. Government officials were often members of the pharaoh's family or other upper class families. Most of them inherited their positions from family members. The three most important government officials were the vizier, the chief treasurer, and the general of armies. Each had its own duties. Let's talk about the vizier first. The vizier had more power than anyone except for the pharaoh. They were second in command of Egypt. The vizier would give the pharaoh advice and he would carry out his commands. He was in charge of picking and supervising many of the other government officials. The vizier also had to serve as a judge sometimes in the toughest cases in Egypt. A vizier was expected to be fair, unbiased, and to not favor either side in a dispute or disagreement. They often wore white to show that they were neutral. Next is the chief treasurer. The chief treasurer in Egypt oversaw the wealth of Egypt and the government. His main duty was to collect taxes. Most of the money in Egypt was based on goods rather than actual money. People paid their taxes to the treasurer in grain, cows, cloth, silver, and other resources. Finally, we have the general of armies. After the pharaoh, the next person in power would have been the general of armies, who commanded the military in Egypt. He advised the pharaoh in matters of war and how to make sure that the nation was safe and protected. He would be in charge of protecting Egypt's borders from people who wanted to invade Egypt. He was also in charge of forming alliances, agreements that are working together, with other nearby kingdoms. Government officials had lives of luxury. Most were nobles who had great wealth, fine homes, and plenty of time to socialize. They would often have fancy banquets together, and they took great pride in their meals. Cooks might roast duck, goose, pigeon, quail, antelope, sheep, and goat. Dishes were piled high with special foods that might include figs, dates, grapes, and coconuts. A variety of breads and cakes and honey completed the feast. Guests at banquets dressed in fine linen clothing. Both men and women wore perfume. Women often wore ropes of beads as jewelry. They painted their nails, lined their eyes in makeup, and used lipstick. The feast began with men and women taking their seats on opposite sides of the room. Important guests were given chairs with high backs. Everyone else sat on stools or cushions. Servants, mostly women, waited on the guests. There were no forks or spoons, so people ate with their fingers. While the guests ate, musicians, dancers, and acrobats provided entertainment. Musicians were typically women. They played flutes, harps, rattles, and lutes, which is like a guitar like instrument. Guests often clapped along with the music.